representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
It feels incredible.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by Burger and Hicks. As always, you can check out Burger and Hicks on their website, and you can check them out on TikTok, Instagram, and we'll sure to have the number below as well. We are joined today with Mr. Kevin Barral. We have Eli Sussman, we have Nate, and we have a special guest, Kyle Cruz from Marlins in the Morning.
Cruzy. Give him that second syllable at the end.
Wow, I don't even know where to start. I just came back from covering today's game with Noah. As you can see, Noah's not here. He's still going through the effects of having to watch that game today. An 0-17, they got swept by the Angels. They were swept by the Pirates, and today it really felt like all things are lost so far to start the year. Kevin, you were there also as a fan, but you left. Who knows how you left? Probably right after that first inning. But talk to me a little bit what you saw. Just a bit. AJ Pug did not have his best performance defensively. It was all over the place, and the highlight offensively was an Avi Garcia double.
Yeah, at least AJ Pug went a little bit deeper into his outing today. I think he went 4 innings, 5 hits, 5 strikeouts. I mean, the walks are still an issue. This is, again, a guy who went from reliever to starter. You don't see that too often, I guess, anymore. So with Pug, definitely interesting. I know the Rays have done that before, so I guess that's kind of what Schumacher and Bendix were trying to follow here. But, a little bit of command issues, and just going to get it going, man. I mean, the Angels have some pretty good guys in that lineup. Mike Trout, obviously the top guy there. He had a great game. I believe he had an RBI single in that first inning, driving in 2 and I guess Aaron Hicks has been a Marlins killer this series too. He had the home run yesterday. He, I believe, had a hit today as well in the second.
Miguel Sano, I believe, went 2 for 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is, the Angels just got to the Marlins pitching this time around, and unlike against Pittsburgh, just the offense wasn't able to get it going.
Right. Now, I don't even know where to start on this. Let me actually just get up the previous series summary on this. How the Marlins scored the first 4 runs in this series, and then the Angels outscored them 20-3 the rest of the way. 20 out of the last 23 runs scored by the Angels right here. Right? Yeah. I mean, the last 2, it really is. It somehow got worse. Like, you thought it'd be bad at the start of the series when they blew that 4-0 lead. And then it got worse just because even the offense, which had actually been like not awful the first 5 games of the season, was awful those last 2 games. Any way you slice it. The fact that Avi was one of the more valuable offensive players that they had, that kind of says it all. Those last couple games, just not getting very many base runners in the first place. And I thought AJ Puk was a little bit better than he had been in his previous start, where it shows a little bit more signs of hope in terms of retaining his velocity a little bit deeper into the game than he did his first time out, but still pretty obvious concerns about him actually being a good starter. And then Skip really just punted this game away in those middle innings by going to Birch Smith. He is, at this point, Birch has probably pitched as many games as anybody on the Marlins pitching staff. That is insane for a guy that just joined at the last minute. Right. Yeah, that was his 3rd appearance. Mm-hmm. That's as many as anybody. So I think that also kind of just says it all. Shout out Alex Carver who I don't think was watching live, but his guy Kent Emanuel made his triumphant return to the majors. We don't think that is going to last all that long, but he made that appearance right there. So yeah, they've been not just lost every game, but now today's game was about as bad as any of them, just by the margin of victory and the whole vibe around the team. Where they're not going to lose every single one, but as I'll get into in a few moments, like there's just not a ton of precedent for teams being this bad early in the year and getting back to being competitive, much less getting back to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I guess, expect roster moves with Rivera, Emmanuel as well. I would assume he's getting either sent down or DFA. Darren McCacken, who would have been the ideal just swap there. That's not going to happen. So I would have to think it's Yoni Chirinos if I had to put in a guess. He would have been tomorrow's starter for the Jumbo Shrimp. So, you're going to see roster moves. That guy gave you like 3 innings of work, really saved the bullpen, 58 pitches. He was not very good. But again, it goes back to the offense here where they just struggled, man. I mean, Daniel kind of summed it up when your best highlight is a double that eventually, I think that did score a run. I mean, there's not much you can do. It's really tough. And again, the pitching just struggled, Puck struggled, and we'll have to see. Maybe I know you mentioned this Eli early on too. Right as we're going into the season, this is a guy who has minor league options. So if you bring in a couple of these starters back, Braxton's getting close, so is Edward. Maybe he's the odd man out, and you send him down to AAA, get a couple starts in there to really get it going, and not affect the team right now in terms of the losses that they have because there's 0 wins. So that's kind of how I guess the best way to see it, because we're getting close to that point where Edward probably makes one or two more starts, and maybe by the middle of the next homestand, they're making a move to bring one of those guys back.
Yeah. I wanted to ask Kyle for this series. There are a lot of things that went wrong for the Marlins. You could say defensively. We'll get into also today's game with Brujan and what happened there maybe with Jazz. But offensively, or I should say the positive, what do you see positively from this series against the Angels, if any at all?
If anything, I guess like you guys were saying, we have a fresh bullpen for tomorrow's game. You'll have Nardi and Tanner Scott, and
Woohoo!
Yeah.
I mean, you used a couple. You used Bert Smith today. You got some room for the series this weekend. I don't know. This is not a lot of good looks in this series to me.
I found a positive. I'll show you guys one positive.
Uh-oh.
This one play that Tim Anderson made will make it bigger. This jump throw this afternoon, I think when the game was still mildly competitive, that was a good throw. That was his best defensive play so far this season as a Marlin, both getting rid of it quickly and getting rid of it accurately. So that is one of the only highlights that I gift from this series.
You had a nice diving stop yesterday or 2 days ago too.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was in the first game.
No, this series, Nate, just for Nate and everyone else, do you feel like the Angels are that good? Do you think when you saw this series, it was just Marlins were just overpowered by the Angels, maybe outmatched? Again, they did it today with a lot of players sitting out. Like Nolan Schanuel didn't play the majority of the game. I know Anthony Rendon isn't really worth it at all, but when you're paying someone like that much, they're not even giving that bats. But did you feel like maybe the Marlins were outmatched by the Angels, or do you think these are two teams that are evenly the same, but the Marlins didn't just come to play at all?
Yeah, I don't think they're evenly matched at all looking at the rosters. I mean, I definitely thought that the Marlins would win this series. I had them taking 2 out of 3, just like the Pirates series. But I'm pretty sure the Marlins were favored to win every game, at least in terms of win probability, and then they just come out and fall flat. I feel like the first series they hit and they couldn't really pitch in those games. In this series, they pitched better and then they couldn't hit. So it's just not – can't really get the pitching and the hitting. Then, of course, the fielding has been shaky all year so far. But you don't want to overreact. But, I mean, I guess ball doesn't lie. Angels just swept them. So it looks right now that they're better than the Marlins.
Yeah. It seemed like in every instance the Angels came out, whether it was Aaron Hicks, whether it's Nolan Schanuel, who currently now has, I believe, a 35-game on-base streak. Zach Neto, who had a double today, a really good outing from him, also defensively. When you're looking at these Angels guys, and you look at Samuel and Neto, do you think maybe they're kind of haunting the Marlins a bit, especially the way they performed? That looking back at it, maybe the Marlins should have taken chances on guys like this, or maybe other guys that are now coming back to bite the Marlins on the rear end.
Well,
Neto,
to make-
100%.
Yeah,
I
like
do.
tell them, Kevin, just for anybody that's unfamiliar about how both of those guys could have been Marlins.
Yeah, so the Marlins in 2022, it was the Jacob Berry pick. There were 6. I believe Neto ended up going 11th, so they passed up on him. Neto, in a matter of a year, makes the major league team, and he's their future at shortstop. Skip spoke very highly of Neto yesterday post game, and then Nolan Shanuel was picked one spot after Noble Meyer. And just for comparison, Noble Meyer, as expected, in low A, they just put out a picture of that on Twitter. Shanuel really just blazed through the system. He made it in I guess like a month or two after he was drafted. He was playing with Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. And I mean, you have to think about it too, because the Angels are known for really pushing prospects quickly through the system. You could ask yourself, would someone like Neto or Shanuel in this Marlins system, would they have really made it up that quickly? And that's kind of what I'm asking myself. Maybe the development would have been different, but Shanuel is a really good prospect. I'm no longer prospect. He's now a major leaguer. And I like the profile a lot. Low strikeout, high walk. Dude struck out. I mean, in 3 years in college, he only struck out 57 times in like 800 plate appearances. So it's really impressive what he did. He hit his first homer here back in Florida. So it's cool to see that. Neto had a section, I believe it was section 8, completely full of Angels fans. So all those attendants, I would say majority were Angels fans in those couple of days here in Miami. But yeah, definitely. I don't know how much haunting, but Neto definitely proved the Marlins wrong, and so did Shanuel, who, I mean, those guys are Florida guys. It would have been cool to have them here, but things happen.
Yeah, and knowing the Marlins, they probably most likely would still be in the minor leagues currently. I don't think
Probably.
the Marlins and probably with Zach Neto would instantly be the best shortstop in the entire system. Same, maybe could even go maybe first base. I don't know if you want Josh Bell, Nolan Shanuel, starting every day, but
You would feel a lot better. You would feel a lot better about your first base situation, because after Bell, I mean, you have Troy, and Troy definitely should be a major leaguer, but we're not talking about Troy Johnson today.
Yeah, as much as we would love to talk about Troy, but I'm looking here at some of the leaderboards. Who else but Mike Trout getting MVP? 2 home runs this series. He had an RBI, I believe, double or single today, just dominating this entire series, showing why he is still one of, if not the best player in all of baseball. Just incredible performance by him. Let's see, Nick got it. And then I'm just gonna say BK got it as well, and then myself, yours truly, getting the series prediction right, or at least with the Angels winning it overall. I wanted to ask you guys today also, with Patrick Sandoval going up against the Marlins, it seemed like maybe they really couldn't figure him out up until that 3rd inning. It seemed like most of the time they really couldn't figure out Patrick Sandoval or try to get away from him. I know he had high strikeouts today. You just go ahead and look at that past that 3rd inning. What did you guys see the Marlins handling Patrick Sandoval or going against him? Again, was it just being outclassed by him, or was it just seemingly maybe he is that good against the Marlins?
I mean, you would have to look at all 3 pitching matchups. Aside from Silseth, I mean, Tyler Anderson yesterday, 7 shutout innings. I don't think anyone saw that coming. Felt like the Marlins just weren't able to see his changeup whatsoever. Then with Sandoval, I mean, you would have to look at just what he used for the most part, and it must have been a lot of that secondary stuff which kind of got the Marlins yesterday, got him today, and that's just, man, that just can't happen. After facing the Pirates, which are a very good team, Sandoval struck out on almost 10, and it was almost all on that changeup slider combo, which has been lethal for him. So I mean, it's just a tough day for them. I'm pretty sure they got to Sandoval last year too. So it was interesting, Sandoval must have made some pretty good adjustments. And that feels like it's been the case too, Marlins got to him pretty early. They got those 2 runs, I want to say in the 2nd or 3rd inning. And then after that, he just made the right adjustments. Same thing went with, the Angels hitting. I mean, you look at Marlins pitching, and it looks like the Angels were really quick to making adjustments, especially Aaron Hicks in those last two games.
Yeah. A guy's impressive when he strikes out Arise twice.
Yeah, he's striking out twice.
A single game. So just 3 matchups between them and 2 swinging strikeouts. I think it says all you have to know about how nasty his stuff went. He clearly outpitched Puck in this game, regardless of what the bullpen usage looked like after that. It was going to be, there was a pretty decisive difference between those two.
Yeah, just really difficult there with the Marlins going up against Patrick Sandoval. Maybe to close this out, Kyle, with this, well, what do you hope the Marlins to improve on? I know we could go offensively, pitching, bullpen, but what is one key aspect that you take away from this Angel series that you hope the Marlins can steadily improve on tomorrow against the Cards?
Who's pitching tomorrow? It's Weathers tomorrow.
Yeah,
we get
against Landslide.
Do we get a quality start? Maybe. I know we're gonna start asking a lot out of starters with the way that this bullpen is. Maybe we get guys in this series to start seeing that 90, 95 pitches if it's pushing it a little bit. But I don't know. It'd be nice to see one guy come out and shove a little bit, try to get this offense some breathing room.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, everything.
Yeah, it's a lot. As you can see here, a little heart to heart, and Marlins can use a little love. That's my hand on the left, Kevin's on the right.
Just getting away from Lone Depot Park maybe will help. Actually, Jake Berger, if in some seriousness, Berger had a comment after the game about that, like how simply like flushing away being in Miami this entire homestand. I don't know, that somehow mentally that could be somewhat refreshing. Always looking for
hang
the
out
bright
on the
side.
plane.
Yeah. Bonding. It's gonna be their first flight as a group that they've ever done. If you think about it, because of course there's no flight between spring training and Jupe in Miami. And this is the first time going on the road. So who knows? Yeah, maybe they connect on that flight, or maybe it's just a really awful flight because they have not won a single game. So it could go either way. Just this team, as really disappointing as they've been so far. And actually, this is a good time to pull up the stats, just like putting into context this start to the season. Just looking in the wild card era, about the last 30 years, if you compare to in the time where they've had this somewhat expanded playoff field, how many teams have lost this many games in a row to start the year? And they're now the 10th during this period. They've lost at least 7 straight coming straight out of the gate. I caution people not to actually look at the individual teams that are worse than them that did this as well, because all of them finished way below 500. If I did the research correctly, I think only that Tigers team in 2008, they were the best at like 74 and 88. And all these other teams were even farther below 500. There's some 100 lost teams in here, like one of those Tigers teams, that Twins team, even that Braves team in 2016. That was probably the low point that the Braves have had in recent decades, in 2016, right when they were still coming out of right in the middle of that rebuild that they went through. So yeah, history is not very much on their side, but even history says that some of these teams will not necessarily be last place teams. That there is there's still some talent here, and it's but really this entire week was just a baffling lack of execution. Like, you could say all you want about the lineup, nitpicking the lineup, and some Skip Schumacher's decisions. But when you look at it, these guys just played terribly. They did not play up to their potential. And if these guys are really fully healthy and have full strength, they're going to stumble into more wins than they've had so far moving forward.
Marlins and the Mets are the only 2 teams in baseball without a win yet. The White Sox finally won a game. So
yeah, the A's won a game, and even you look at the Mets, like half of their games have been postponed. So it seems like, it's only their 0-3, 0-4. Marlins 0-7, larger sample size there.
Yeah.
Speaking of 0-7, let's go ahead and talk about really quickly before we head to the break this article that just came out a few minutes ago by Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, talking about the Marlins 0-7 start and if they should start thinking about becoming sellers. Yeah, and I believe one of the last lines there in the article, you see it there on the tweet, if the Marlins under Bendix are going to operate like the Rays, they have to be open trading players. And the two players that they presented as options for the Marlins to trade, maybe even this season, are Jesus Luzardo and Luis Arias. Two, if not the best players on the roster, not named Sandy Alcantara, especially the ones that are healthy. What do you guys think about them potentially trading these two players, especially right now in the season? I know we're just talking about this, the first two series just ended, but is it already time to start thinking about life without Arias and Luzardo?
I mean, yeah, Arise is what, this year, next year, and that's it. I mean, not much longer left. Luzardo, I believe, is the same situation, maybe a little more, but Luzardo, we've heard about. We've known this for a while that, he's been out there. He's been dangled out there for trades. It was almost Baltimore, had it not been Corbin Burns. Luis Arias, I don't think anyone had heard that before, but it makes sense. This is a guy who unfortunately just won't age very well. We saw the injuries last season really take a toll on him. Really, I don't know if he'll stick long term at second base. There's a lot of reasoning to think that he won't be chasing 400 every single year. And maybe right now would be the good time to get rid of him. As much as I hate to do it, because he is one of the nicest humans ever. He was a great guy. He's a good clubhouse guy to have. Everyone loves him, and he is the heart and soul of this Marlins offense. But just imagine the package you could get for someone like Arias. And imagine the package the Marlins could have gone had they traded Arias in the offseason. I mean, you would have to go back and look at what they had prior to making that Dylan Cease trade. You would have gotten Drew Thorpe. Probably could have gone to a couple more of their top prospects. I mean, right now, Arias's value in the offseason after winning a batting title would have been at the peak. You would have to hope that he kind of gets it going again. And that would be really just a great haul. Same goes with Luzardo. You could probably even get more for Luzardo given his age, how much younger he is. And I believe I think he has the same amount of control, or even more. So it's just, you would love to do something like that. But again, I mean, you hope the Marlins get it going, man, because they need it, and you hope they compete. But just the fan and the fan in me wants them to compete, but the media and myself looks at it like, yeah, it makes sense to do something like that,
Well, something that Kevin touched on was the idea that Arise, his trade value really did peak in the offseason. And I don't think it's going any higher than here just because he's getting closer to the end of his years of club control. And you can say the same thing about Luzardo. I mean, maybe there's a potential that if he goes up a level this first half of the season, really establishes himself as an all-star, then maybe at the deadline he'll be at his highest. That is one reason why I was just so confused by the offseason, because it did seem like a lot of signs pointing to this rebuild is getting underway. Bendix is not being judged by wins and losses this year. Might as well get things started now and rebuild this organization and this roster in his own image. And then he just didn't do any of that until the very end of the offseason. He trades Birdie, but Birdie is, not on that same caliber of player where the message isn't quite as clear in terms of what you're doing. That's somebody that maybe you can actually replace on the fly. Whereas these are the kind of names that you obviously could not. And it had been reported that they were shopping those other starting pitchers, including Luzardo, and didn't quite get a deal done there. The fact that he didn't do it is just really confusing, because you would think that he would be focused on maximizing the value if he's going to make that tough decision to kind of reset things, that you want to maximize the value of the guys that you're moving in order to get the best stuff in return. And if you just stay still, then you're not doing anybody any favors, because the team is not good enough as it is, and you're just squandering away this opportunity to get as much as you possibly could. But this touches on the point that you might not wait until the trade deadline if it's that clear that this team is bad. This is I don't even think it's mentioned in this article, but I remember when they moved Willie Adames 3 years ago to the Brewers. That happened in May, in middle of May. Their primary shortstop from Tampa Bay, they moved into the Brewers. And I think there is some history of them making other deals like that, relatively early on in the season, whether they pick a lane between buying or selling, not blockbuster stuff, but the fact that he gets creative and that the one thing that I guess Bendix has been transparent about is how he is always having conversations. I think that's what he likes to say, where he didn't like to, even during spring training, didn't like to say this team is set. He said that we're always listening, and that it's a fluid situation and stuff like that. And I think I believe him in that aspect, that whenever two sides are able to compromise on a package of something, that he's going to just go ahead and do it. So yeah, it would not shock me, but at the same time, this is a little bit premature 7 games in, because all teams have nightmare weeks like this over the course of the season. This just happens to come at the worst possible time.
I want to ask Nate this, and also Kyle. With these two players, Luzardo or Rise, would you be inclined to trade him? Do you have a preference of either of those guys being traded? And maybe are there any other players you think the Marlins might trade that aren't being talked about right now?
I think if I had to choose between Luzardo and Rise, I'd probably say Luzardo. High end starting pitch like that's much harder to come by. But like Eli mentioned, it's kind of crazy that we're talking about trade proposal only a week into the season. Like the All-Star break last year, they came out and lost 8 straight, and bad weeks happen to everyone. But like Kevin said, at the end of the day, if you want to, and like Ken mentioned also, if you want to take Bendix and you want to be like the Rays, everyone has to be on the table. I'd probably say the only untouchable in my book would be Erie, but the value you can get from some of those other guys if you want to start a rebuild, it would be a lot. So I think it's a bit premature still, but if things keep trending this direction, I'd probably say that everyone's on the table besides for Erie.
Yeah, I mean, the only other name that I could have really thought of after, and I think I mentioned this before, I think we all agreed on it at some point, that really right after the season, they should have tried to trade DLC. I mean, he had a better year than he did in 2022 to 2023, just overall better power numbers. But again, it's not looking too good right now for him. So, but again, that would have been the ideal guy. A lot of years of control left. I mean, aside from that, man, you kind of would have to hope Tim Anderson really puts him some numbers to at least garner something back for him. He's on a 1-year deal, not losing too much out of him, especially if you aren't competing by then. But, it's still too early to be talking about trades and guys who are on the board. But, the fact that this article came out now, it's definitely interesting. And I know it's 0-7. It's probably the perfect time to drop it, but could have waited, at least a month into the year. But again, I mean, the fact that the Padres, we know AJ Preller, that he is extremely aggressive when it comes to trade, and it wouldn't have shocked me if he really made a big move for a Rise, and wouldn't shock me if he starts calling again.
Once Emmanuel Rivera came off the market, that's when trade season really started.
Yeah.
Those cash considerations. I mean, hey, look at the Marlins. They're already making 2 trades this early on to the season. I mean, maybe Bendix is really going for it in terms of, everyone's up for the trade. 1 trade right before the season, and one, the first series in, he makes a trade immediately for Emmanuel Rivera. So we'll see that. Kyle, I want to get your last thoughts on this before we head into our break.
It's tough with Luzardo because he is 26. You still have a lot of. I guess he's only got this year, next year, but it would sting to see a guy when you have Sandy coming back, losing a nice consistent piece in the rotation. He has been, somewhat dependable. If I had to guess, I would say Rise is probably the more likely. I can't believe we're talking about this 7 games in, but I guess a couple months from now, I could definitely see a Rise being more on the table.
Yeah. And now let's go and do, Eli, we have our flipped fish for Marlins Cardinals, because I feel like I need something to take my mind after what I saw earlier today.
Yeah, I'm glad Isaac isn't here, because I think he might get this, but for the rest of you, it might be a challenge. So I hope one of you guys surprise me on this. We pick a player who played for each the Marlins and their upcoming opponent at some point during their career. This one is a retired player. It's usually a retired player. Let me just see if I have my hints right here. Yeah, here we go. So just a couple biographical details from Baseball Reference about this player that will give us an idea about who it might be. A center fielder, right-handed hitter from South Carolina originally, turning 50 later this year. So not active anymore, at least not in affiliated baseball that I know of. Played from 98 to 07 in the majors, and those are his overall numbers. Nearly 200 homers, 6.5 WAR, about an 800 OPS. He's a fine player. He was around for a while, played for both the Marlins and the Cardinals. So we will go to our break. And when we get back, try to tell us who it is. Put it in the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. We could see all your comments over there. Well, the reveal on the other side of the break. Stick with us.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Any guesses from our panel?
Is that let's see.
Can't think, bro. It's not McNair Sierra, guys. I can assure you that. No, he didn't even play for them.
Aaron Reynolds. My gut. No, I don't. I think it's wrong now.
I'm going to check if I have a GIF of this guy.
Kotze play for? No, he was corner outfielder.
6 WAR. This guy did not have a 6 WAR.
It is Preston Wilson.
Dang it. I didn't know he had a 6 WAR. I thought he at least had a 15.
It feels like he had about 6 with the Marlins, and then he just didn't add on to it much.
The Rockies?
Yeah, he did not rate well as a defensive center fielder, even though he played out there. But with the Cardinals, he won a World Series title. He was there in 06 at the end of his career when they won it all. But he was, the trivia question, like him and Hanley, the only 30-30 players in Marlins history to this point. So he's always going to be brought up in those conversations around Jazz, for example. Once Jazz continues to chase that milestone, Preston Wilson was the first Marlin to ever do that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Shout out Preston Wilson. Let's go ahead and talk about. Well, actually, before we get into the series, really quickly, I want to talk about Emmanuel Rivera and the trade with John Birdie, because we haven't mentioned or talked about that yet. And I know there was in the comments they want to get our thoughts, not just on the trade, but the DFA of Jacob Amaya, a guy that the Marlins traded for not too long ago for one of their so-and-so captains in Miguel Rojas. What happened there? But it got a lot of fanfare when the Marlins traded Miguel Rojas. It was a big trade due to a big team like the Dodgers. Getting Jacob Amaya was a top prospect for them. And then for the Marlins, he was rated relatively highly. I know on Fish on First, for Kevin, for Alex, Isaac, Eli, he was rated highly. Baseball America, MLB Pipeline, if not one of the top position players in the system for the Marlins. And first off, before we get into Rivera, Kevin, you're the big prospect guy here. Talk to us about what the Marlins lost in Jacob Amaya, and is it going to hurt that badly, DFA?
Well, we still don't know if they lost him, but
yes.
I would have to think they will. I think he does end up getting claimed. I mean, I think, when they first traded for him, the big thing was the defense, and that ended up being accurate. I do think he's a very good defensive shortstop, but there's a reason why we have him this high is because of the defense that he does provide at shortstop. He could stick at the position. It's just the bat, it's just the offense. He really never got it going. He, you look back at last season, he was really good, man. It was really good offense. Like the approach was really good. It was just really good stuff. And it felt like it just was like a confidence hit when he got sent back down, when he made that cup of coffee appearance. And no offense, he sucked. There's just no other way to say it. And a lot of the home runs, no offense, I think those were kind of fluky. You look at Jacksonville, you look at the porch, you'll look at it. Thankfully they made a lot of adjustments, so it's a lot longer. It's a lot higher now. So good to see. But again, I mean, I think he does get claimed. We were pretty high on him. Doesn't mean that we thought he was one of the best prospects in the system, just what the Marlins have. So we'll have an update soon. We have to make an update soon because there's a lot of things we, kind of later on after the spring decided to make changes for. But yeah, definitely a questionable DFA. There was other guys you probably could have gone with. Can't name them off the top of my head, but there's guys there that probably Eli looked at that could have been DFA'd before Amaya.
Right. It's in hindsight, I do think we may have been a little too high on him entering the season, partially because of how he looked in spring. He was it was ugly this spring. They did not when they didn't give him really any sort of serious chance to make the team, even in a part-time job. Remember, Tim Anderson joined the team a little bit into camp. He wasn't even there at the very beginning. And then even when he came aboard, they were very quick to option Amaya instead of having him as like the backup shortstop on the team. Because right now there like isn't a clear backup shortstop at the moment. And he's ready defensively. But yeah, like the numbers were a little inflated at AAA because it is such a hitter-friendly environment down there. And his tools are they just don't jump out really on any side of the ball. He is very sure-handed and he's smooth defensively, but he's just not a good athlete. And that holds him back in certain areas. He really limits his ceiling. That being said, like shortstop defense alone, for a guy that also had minor league options, that has significant value. Like that is so at the same time, I think we're too high on him. At the other side, I do not see him as a typical DFA candidate. And if they get rid of him for nothing more than cash considerations, or even worse, if he's just a plain waiver claim, if he's in the same level as Manuel Rivera, despite playing a more premium position, despite having those options and being younger, like I just don't understand the timing of this. He felt like a guy to me that you give him a chance over the course of this year. And if we get like to the middle of the year and he takes a step backwards with the bat, then you DFA him. But it's just all really premature because the team doesn't have other shortstops anywhere. Tim Anderson, it's just a 1-year deal. And at this point, there's not really compelling evidence to say that he's bounced back from where he was last year when he struggled so much for the White Sox. They left Nasim Nunez unprotected. He's gone with the Nats. There's no definitive way to know if they're going to get him back at any point. Maybe they do. If they do get him back, that's only going to be because he was unusable in the majors for the Nats. If they get him back, it's going to be because he failed up there. You look at the minors, it's Tristan Gray. It is Jose Devers. Remember Jose Devers? He's still alive and kicking. Tonight on AAA Jacksonville, their shortstop is Jonathan Guzman, isn't it? Yeah, Jonathan Guzman, who I bet even none of us would recognize if we saw him in the street. He was not in big league camp with the team, Jonathan Guzman. And he's playing shortstop for their AAA affiliate right now. So it's such an important position. And this team did not make a big move to address it. They took a flyer on a guy for 1 year, but their future at shortstop is so uncertain now, even more so with Jacob Amaya now hanging in DFA limbo.
Yeah, because worst comes to worst, Amaya is at least a good defensive guy, kind of like what Nasim could have been for the Marlins, where good pinch run guy, you could play him on the field really anywhere, and he would pan out pretty well. But again, I mean, this team needs offense, and they've sacrificed enough offense already, enough defense to get offense, and obviously it hasn't worked. But I mean, I don't know. You kind of look down the roster and you tell yourself, who else could you really have DFA'd? It would have really been Brujan, or you would have to go with like a Jose Devers or something. But again, I mean, it's
or a pitcher, or it would have to come on the pitching side where they have all these nondescript relievers that they've Birch Smith. They could have. Well, then again, so that's what's tricky is that you also needed to, if it was somebody that was in the big leagues. Let me actually just throw up the 40-man roster real quick so that we get on the same page here. Because as I thought about this, it is a little bit trickier than it looked on the surface to decide who else could have been gone instead of Amaya. It's like Rodri Munoz, who was a waiver claim earlier this offseason. Their options are maybe Fauché. They give a little bit to trade for him. Darren McCacken, they really value his innings eating ability, but he's somebody that also, in terms of can he actually get big league hitters out, he hasn't shown that so far. And yeah, if you look at there really weren't a ton of options there at the moment, unless they were going to move some of these any of these pitchers to like the 60-day IL. That would have been the alternative with Yuri, for example. If they're going to very slow play it with him, potentially they could have moved him to the 60-day, but that would keep him out throughout most of the month of May. So yeah, it was not an easy decision, but at the same time, it's not like the roster is loaded to begin with. It is that awkward situation where the least valuable players on this 40-man are ones that are at the big league level right now, and they made some sort of conscious decision to acquire them in the first place here.
After today, DFAing Brujan would have been easier said than done, but whatever.
Yeah, Brujan had some mishaps today. Skip mentioned how the defense cost some runs and gave AJ Puck extra pitches on his pitch count. Jazz, the shortstop. Well, I don't know. No, I think they've invested so much time into Jazz becoming a center fielder that moving him to shortstop, which really wasn't even the position the Marlins had him when they had here, would just be. I don't.
Apparently, he was interested in. Oh God.
Yeah, Skip mentioned how he didn't even see this happen. He didn't see Jazz, fall down and land. He says he had to go and he has probably now or before they left. He's looking at the replay video to see how Jazz landed and what happened.
I think, no offense, and again, playing baseball is very difficult, but I don't know. I think that was a little too excessive. But again, he's putting his body on the line there, and I do think the reaction later was a bit much. But again, it's baseball. I don't play it. He does. But really quickly, and we never spoke about Rivera. I like the profile. He was very good in the Caribbean series. I know it's like AA pitching there, but still, he was very good. He was a part of a good lineup. I think we could all say that we love the defense. What he provides defensively, I believe, is a 90 RS between at third base, I want to say only. And then he had a very nice year with Kansas City and with Arizona when he got traded from Kansas City. Aside from that, he's a lefty killer. Skip said he'll be used all around the field, but primarily against left-handed pitching. So they need it. I mean, when you have Avi Garcia and I think it's Vidal Brujan facing lefties, you definitely need to acquire. You need to bring in some more help. And in very limited sample size of it was 90 at bats against lefties. It was 289, 333, 378, but a 711 OPS. We'll see. I like the profile. I like, the power. He can provide some good power, 10 home run power. He's only had, 12 the most in his career? Not the greatest, but I like Rivera. This is nothing crazy, but definitely a guy who has control until, 2026. Or no, Eli, you would know this. How many more years does he have left?
It's 4 years, well, including this year, it's 4 years through 2027 potentially. But if we know what Bendix has shown, I think once he starts getting into arbitration and earning more money, it's going to be that push and pull. Where is he going to replace him with somebody cheaper a couple of years from now? The way that essentially he's replacing Birdie. I think that's something to keep in mind. This is essentially a corresponding move for Birdie. It is a lesser version, a slightly different version, but a much younger version as well of that type of player where he can't play shortstop, but can at third base. And maybe there's a potential that his best offense is still to come, especially if he is put in those advantageous platoon situations.
Yeah. So let's go into the preview against the Cardinals. Obviously, we don't have a lineup since we're doing it now, and the game is tomorrow in the middle of the afternoon. But we could most likely assume the lineups that will be projected, and we can probably give you the guys who we are for sure certain are going to play. Nate, when looking at the Cardinals, there are a lot of guys who are Marlins killers that could potentially halter the Marlins into getting their first win. We have guys like Nolan Arenado, of course, Paul Goldschmidt. Jordan Walker has been almost a Marlins killer going back to maybe his spring training and what happened there. Brandon Crawford. Who are you looking at this Cardinals lineup? Who intimidates you the most if you were a Marlins hitter?
Well, obviously, you mentioned Goldschmidt and Arenado, but like you said, Jordan Walker has been a Marlins killer. I think one of the first games of spring training last year, he had a blast, and he did pretty well against Marlins in spring training this year. And, of course, last year against AJ Puck in that wild game when he tied the game up. But, obviously we know how he was as a prospect, highly touted, probably a top 10 prospect in baseball before he broke into the league. And I think once he gets his feet settled in the majors, he's going to be a scary guy to face, and definitely not someone I'd want to face if I was a Marlins pitcher this week.
Yeah, and same question goes to you, Kyle. because a lot of guys we haven't mentioned Wilson Contreras and what he's capable of, and then you can also go ahead to the pitching side. Lance Lynn making his home re-debut with the Cardinals as well.
Yeah, I actually was looking at the numbers earlier, and historically the Marlins are pretty good against Lance Lynn, which is nice to see. And then Steven Matz is next, and he's kind of a Marlins killer. But yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, this offense just has to get going. So it's sort of a. I don't really know if it matters who's on the mound right now for St. Louis. It's just got to be something, 3 hits in a row, something for Miami.
This is from Fangraphs, where they put together this win probability estimate entering every game. They had the Marlins favored based partly on the starting pitching matchups. They had them favored to win every single game of this past homestand. I cannot remember seeing a losing streak like that when there is some sort of statistical reason to be optimistic about them. I think they were betting favorites for a lot of these games too, in addition to being projected favorites. And now it's the opposite going to St. Louis. Now they're kind of notable underdogs in each of these 3 based on what you could project right now. Yeah, it is. I think the Marlins faced each of these guys at some point during spring training, with Matz a couple times. I'm not actually sure if they faced Lance Lynn in spring. Maybe not him.
No.
Right. But yeah, they're one of the reasons why I was skeptical about the Marlins being a real playoff contender this year is because teams like the Cardinals could go nowhere but up. They were not going to be the same train wreck that they were last year. So even now, I think they're more of a middling team than they are like a real like a top-notch contender. But they're not going to be quite as dysfunctional as they were in 2023. And so, yeah, some of that is with Jordan Walker getting an extra year of maturity. We'll see if I think Goldschmidt, by his standards, he was actually not very good last year. By his crazy standards, by most team standards, he was. But for a guy that just won National League MVP not that long before that, just the year before 2023, that is somebody that obviously has a ton of upside going on right here. It's it is. I think by most measures, it is the best opponent they faced so far. But it's one that still has their flaws at this point. No one guy on their team is red hot at the moment entering the series offensively. And then, pitching wise, not really guys in the bullpen that really jump out to you besides Ryan Helsley when he's on, but to this point in the season doesn't look especially sharp right now. Overall, it's not a super intimidating team. It's just that the Marlins are in this situation where they haven't been able to bank wins against inferior teams. So you really can't overlook anybody. You can't really, there's no guarantee of any victory at this stage of the season when you literally have 0 victories to show for it so far.
Yeah, I guess the most player I'll throw out there is Brendan Donovan, who's gotten off to a very nice start. But we probably won't see him until the last game, given it'll be the only righty Max Meyer taking the mound there. Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, still freaking great. So, right. Aside from that, this is a really good Cardinals team. No matter what, I like their young pieces. You have Victor Scott, Jordan Walker, as Nate mentioned. You also have Mason Wynn, and I think Ivan Hero will probably get a couple games back there. He was really good during the Caribbean Series, had a great spring. So definitely will be interested to see how he gets it going there. So it's a good Cardinals team. Now I think they should be able to get to the pitching. I know they got to Lance Lynn last year against Dodgers. Hopefully they'll do it again. They really need to do it. But when they went up there last time, I believe they got swept, I want to say, in St. Louis. So not the greatest memories. I know they got walked off once, which was Puck trying to save the game. I remember that. That was an Nolan Arenado walk-off. So not the greatest memories for Skip in St. Louis as a manager, but hopefully he could get some revenge.
Yeah. And, we mentioned the pitching matchups. I mean, Eli, when looking at, the starters they're facing, Lance Lynn, Steven Matz, Kyle Gibson, they can kind of go back to what they've seen earlier. They're not seeing a guy who's maybe a top-tier ace. I know Mitch Keller was the opening day starter, so would Patrick Sandoval. But those guys, I believe, won't be aces on other rosters. They're probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 guys. Just how do you think the Marlins, are going against these guys. They're going up against these starters who aren't top tier, upper echelon guys, and they're faltering behind it. Just how do you think the Marlins can improve upon that when they do end up facing top tier guys?
The Lance Lynn matchup seems pretty appetizing based on what he did last year when he allowed more home runs than almost anybody in recent memory over the course of the season. As a whole, these guys pitch to contact a lot, but for the Marlins, it's the guys that pitch to contact on the ground are going to do just fine against this team, as you've noticed, who I think the only thing they did right today is they only grinded into one double play today. It was a good day from that aspect, but otherwise they grounding into more double plays than any other team in baseball this year after doing so already last year. Kyle Gibson and Steven Matz, and now with the better defense behind them this year than it was for the Cardinals in 2023, with Mason Wynn taking over as their shortstop, Victor Scott in center, at least for the time being. Even when balls do get out of the infield, I think that's kind of what the Cardinals are envisioning here, that they think they can still have success even without having a typical ace because their defense is going to be better than what it had been. But that's, yeah, you can't feel super confident just because of the way that this team's been performing. Our buddy Isaac in the chat, he was venting a little bit about how there's just so much rollover ground ball, weak contact from this entire lineup over the course of this year. And if that continues, then it doesn't matter how low the strikeout number is. There's just going to be a lot of unproductive outs and double plays, even when they have base runners on. So it is, it's not the worst matchup in the world, but it's also for this particular team. I don't know exactly what is the ideal matchup for this offense right now. They kind of just need to get lucky and catch a guy on a bad day, or they have to put in some work and get their like system for tipping pitches a better handle on. I think that was a big reason why John Mabry was promoted to hitting coach after Brant Brown went away, is that he is pretty tuned in on how to catch patterns and guys that are chipping certain pitches on the opposing team. So he needs to really earn his paycheck in like this particular matchup in order for them to jump on one of these guys in an unconventional way.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys are ready. Do you guys want to head straight into prediction time and talk about this? Because I know if we keep going, it's going to get a little more depressing each time we talk about the Marlins.
Yeah, that's good. I have an interim prediction time video. I don't know how long this is going to last, but we'll use it for one time.
This is prediction time.
We got to end it off right. We got to.
It's fine.
Oh, Eli, the top.
Well, I've the wrong one. I uploaded the right one. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Yeah. See, I uploaded the right one. I just I need to remember to remove the old ones once we get through with a certain series. Yeah, there was because of the quick turnaround, there was only a few super sub predictions that were sent in ahead of time. I think one of them picked the Cardinals to sweep, and a couple others are still optimistic about the Marlins. One of them had the Marlins to sweep with Luis Arraez as MVP. But yeah, we encourage people to submit those on the site, just comment on in the section right below the live stream link every time, or in our Discord channel. The link is in the YouTube description to join the Marlins Discord server. You could also send your entries in there. But I wanted to, I got to show the leaderboard now.
Oh, yes, please. Show that leaderboard. Let's go.
Leaderboard together that we have through the first two series.
Don't look.
Yeah, overall, people can earn a maximum of 3 points per series, but there's been no, because of the early season optimism, it's a low-scoring competition right now.
That's
with
what I
Daniel
get for not being optimistic. You have to.
The underlined names are Fish on First staffers, and everybody else in here is either a guest that has graciously joined us on the show, or they are one of our super subs for as little as $4 a month. Yeah, only 7 out of 36 people so far have accrued any sort of points through the first two series. Yeah, myself, I am also still scoreless to this point. Yeah, so Daniel won this in 2022, and I think Will, who is in this big tie for last place, I believe he was the one that won it last year. So that is what we are looking at right now.
All right, let's start things off.
Let's get that music going. Nope, there we go.
And of course, starting us off, Hitting leadoff, Mr. Kevin Behan.
Oh God, I don't know where to go with this one. To be honest with you, I'm gonna go Marlins sweep. I'm feeling optimistic. Think the pitching matchups really favor their way. And for my MVP, I'm gonna go with Jake Berger. Had his 8th RBI today against the Angels. Think he'll keep it going. He's actually going to a pretty good ballpark for him. Let's see. Hopefully the Marlins can sweep it up and go 3-7 on the season. Get the ball rolling again.
Kyle.
I'd like to be. You know what? It's got to bounce back eventually. I'm going to take Marlins 2 out of 3, and then let me go De La Cruz as my MVP of the series. He's going to be in the middle of the order, so stick with it.
All right, we'll go with myself here. As again, I'm going to continue not being optimistic until the Marlins prove me right. I'm going to go St. Louis takes 2 out of 3, and my MVP, looking at it here, let's go with the hometown Miami boy, Nolan Arenado. Not having the best start of the season so far, but he looks to turn things around against the hometown team. Nate.
I'm going to hop on your wave, Daniel. I was optimistic the first 2 series as well, but until they show me something, I can't really take them right now. So I'm going to take the Cardinals, take 2 out of 3, and since the Marlins are throwing both Trevor Rogers and Ryan Weathers, I got Paul Goldschmidt, career 326 against lefties, taking the MVP this series.
Ooh, nice choice. Finally, Mr. Eli.
I'm picking against the Marlins too. When I started doing that last year, that's when they took off, and I was stubborn with it, and yet they kept winning and winning. So this is my first time picking against the Marlins this year. I had the Cardinals winning 2 out of 3 in the series, but I will go with the Marlin for series MVP. Really unorthodox, Andrew Nardi. He's well rested. I think he appears in a couple of these games in some tight spots, including the game that they do win, and accrues some win probability added in those situations. He's kind of the one guy that I trust the most in this bullpen right now.
All right, it's good choices there all around the board. Again, if you're a super subscriber, you can become one on our website, and you still have time to join prediction time as it will close, I believe, when it's close to first pitch. Yeah. That's going to do it for us here. For myself, Daniel, Kevin, Eli, Nate, Kyle, this has been FOF Live presented by Berger and Hicks. As always, go Fish.
Thanks a lot, Kyle.
Thanks.
See you. Thank you. See you, guys.